Paul O'Sullivan left Parliament without even finishing his testimony. Let's have a look.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
The question that I made with him is
Mr. O'Sullivan.
he wanted it's no Jay.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
I told him. It's fine. Jay, it's fine. Jay, I think we've dealt with the question.
He can't read. It's not released. Righteousness. Yes.
Oh, I was about to say
We are dealing with criminals. But what did they say is a fraud now?
Yeah, it doesn't. They also told me to
Honorable Nompan.
No, Chair, I'm saying heroes don't walk alone. Honorable Souls forgot to escort his hero. You must escort him to the airport.
Sorry, Chair, I have to. You see, when people disregard scripture, I will not do the same. When we look at the evidence, that it is done and the sacrifices made was heroic, and it's my opinion. I will maintain. But he has holes. He's not perfect, just like all of us here are not. So I maintain, and I will not retract. Thank you.
Were you done, Advocate Muki?
How to move from here?
Were you done? Yes. Were you done?
I had not completed the questions, Chair.
The altercation between Paul O'Sullivan and MP David Skosana continue outside the Parliament.
Here's the problem. You're no longer in Parliament. You're standing outside Parliament. And you're lying through your teeth. You should just go and pay the debt that you owe to the bank.
Soon after that, a sheriff serves Skosana with bank-related court papers. Then came a political escalation. The Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, alleged intimidation and raised possible POPIA breaches. Now, meanwhile, Standard Bank also responded on their X post that they follow the law, that they are governing by risk frameworks and they are not influenced by political events. Now, we need to actually think about it and ask this question: was this a coincidence or a weaponization of the process itself?
And deny what's in front of us, the work that has been done. It was heroic. I maintain. He's a hero with holes. Thank you, Chair.
A disrespectful hero.
Honorable James.
I cringe when I hear that this man is being called a hero here today. He called us criminals. He said we must lick his asses. And he walked out on us. I'm covered by what Honorable Malema said. This man was embroiled with drug cartels. Drug cartels destroying our communities, our families. Strong links proven in his statement. Has lied under oath and said he didn't receive money. And today we hail him as a hero. He is absolutely no hero to me.
So Paul O'Sullivan have spoken extensively about him and his link to these Big Five cartels and to Shadrach Sibiya and some of the MP in Parliament. And we know that he is a member of AfriForum. AfriForum is the white nationalist group, and in South Africa is known to have very divisive view, white supremacy view. So that is the party, that is the group that he's linked to, Paul Sullivan. And then he's also linked to some of the controversial MP from the DA and also one independent MP for Dale Adams and Dana Kolabana. And he's also linked to IDEC, Andrea Johnson, Paul Sullivan. So the husband of Andrea Johnson, worked with Paul O'Sullivan. And we saw some WhatsApp exchange that Paul O'Sullivan had sent to Sibiya, and Sibiya sent those WhatsApp to Witness F, where they were bragging about the imminent arrest of the crime intelligence CI. Arrested for what? For hiring an engineer. Right, and I told you about those that are stitched up charges. They don't have any merit, those charges like that. Anyway, here he is now. He went to Parliament. He was questioned about his shenanigan. He's linked to these big five cartels, and his resume, and him actually impersonating IDEC and impersonating police of officials in South Africa. His testimony is similar to that of Ban Mahotsi. They don't. There's nothing they say makes sense. All right. There's a hole in the testimony, and this one. I knew this wasn't going to be an easy one for him, and because of his personality, he's short-tempered. He doesn't answer questions. He's very evasive. It's like Sibiya, but on steroids. This one. But anyway, he walked out of his testimony, and it escalated outside with the MP. And then he said what he said, as you've heard. But now we are on another questions that we have to ask ourselves. The question relates to these four uncontested elements. There was a heated parliamentary clash. We saw it. Paul O'Sullivan, in that heated parliamentary clash, referenced an alleged bank debt. The court paper was served. The bank denies political involvement. The Standard Bank denies political involvement. Now, legally speaking, court process do not appear out of nowhere. You don't get a sheriff serve a paper. Sheriff don't just serve papers just suddenly, wake up and say that there is a summons that must be drafted. The summons must be drafted. It must be filed with the court. Okay, must be issued by the court. It must be assigned for service. So that these are the process to serve the court papers, the process to serve them. That, as you have made it clear, it takes a long time. You cannot just wake up today and do this process. Okay, that means then if papers were served immediately after that confrontation of the in Parliament between Paul Sullivan and Skosana, the legal machinery was almost certainly already in motion, right? That does not eliminate this suspicion, but it reframes it. The issue is no longer, was there a summons? The issue now becomes, when was it initiated? The timeline. As you have seen that the Standard Bank responded, but they haven't given us the timeline. They responded under vague legal definition, but they haven't given us the timeline. Weaponize. We have to ask ourselves, was this process weaponized? Weaponization of process is not the same as corruption. It refers to a situation where lawful mechanism intersect with political conflict in ways that produce pressure effects, even if it's entirely legal. In governance theory, institutions can be structurally independent but perceived as strategically aligned. Timing transforms meaning. If a legal process was activated immediately after political confrontation, it can appear as retaliatory and even if procedurally routine. This is about power symmetry. An MP clashes with an alleged private investigator. Now we know that he doesn't even have the credential of private investigators, whatever they call him now. Alleged implicated person with the big five cartels, a major bank's enforcement mechanisms appears. The juxtaposition carries symbolic weight. This juxtaposition, it carries a symbolic weight. So when we have such an institutional environment of implication of these cartels within the institution itself, naturally going to have a feeling of low trust, low institutional trust among citizens, and the political interference in law enforcement, Senzo Mkunu's PKTT saga. We have Malanga Commission, we have other committee investigating such. We also have had a corporate governance failure. The very same bank, Standard Bank, actually it's not allegation, manipulated the rent and was fined. A case, the criminal charges against the bank executive who were involved in this manipulation of the rent, the case is still in the constitutional court to see if they can actually bring all of those people who were involved in this manipulation of the rent. So Standard Bank was one amongst the banks that actually were involved in this corruption, in these banking cartels that manipulated the rand from 7 rand to 18 rand. That of course had an implication for middle class, for South Africans, for cost of living. It was created by one of the banks. The Standard Bank past now becomes an issue here because we now have to question its neutrality. The default to suspicion. This is critical. In high trust democracy, coincidence is acceptable, but when you have this low trust, coincidence is interrogated. This coincidence of what Paul said, then there was a court paper being summoned to an MP. That is the terrain this issue occupies, and it's here that Standard Bank's past becomes relevant. So we know that they entered into a settlement that to deal with the forex exchange manipulation of the South African rand. As I've said, it's the Standard Banks amongst banks that were implicated in this banking cartel corruption. And then they paid approximately 42.7 million rand, which is peanuts when you consider the damage this manipulation did to their rents and the cost of living of ordinary South Africans. Yeah. There was a competitive law administrative penalty that they paid. They haven't faced criminal conviction because South Africa doesn't have that law. It's now in the constitutional court deciding on such law around criminal charges of those bank executives who were responsible for this forex rand manipulation. But here's a strategic reality. When most institutions have this prior regulatory breach like Standard Bank, even unrelated ones, public trust is already strained. Public trust amongst these banks, South African banks, that were implicated in this rent manipulations already strained. So when the controversy arises, people recall history. This does not prove misconduct today, but it changes how we have interpreted the incident that relates to MP, and then suddenly the very same bank that was implicated in this manipulation of the rand delivers coincidentally their court paper, and then they don't give us the timeline. The failure to provide us the timeline is significant because it's through the timeline actually we can be able to see whether there was actually a collaboration between Paul Sullivan and Standard Bank in actually issuing those court papers. So this is suspicion. Everything in this matter reduces to chronology. There are only two decisive questions. When was the summons issued? When was the sheriff instructed? If the summons predates the clash, the weaponization narrative collapses. Like I said, it was so easy for Standard Bank to sort of squash these allegations once and for all, this collaboration between the Standard Bank and one of the member of the Big Five cartels, Paul Sullivan, and to actually tell us, and just give us the number, give us the timeline. The timeline is important. If you give us the timeline of the summon issued, the sheriff instructed, that will collapse and give us evidence. But no, if it post dates, if this sheriff instruction actually was instructed immediately after this altercation, then the narrative intensifies. Notice something powerful here. A single timestamp could stabilize this entire debate. Not legal arguments, not political rhetoric, no press statement, just chronology. Chronological order, timeline chronology. Transparency is cheaper than reputational erosion. For the bank that already has been looked under microscope to be one of the cartels, the banking cartels that wear the tie. This time around, they don't wear balaclava, they wear the ties. So if you are been implicated in this forex manipulation and you pay the fine and there's still a trust erosion there, you would think it would be interest for this bank to release the chronological timeline when they actually issued this summons, the sheriff. It's so cheap, actually. I think it's cheaper than anything else. Here's why this matters beyond personality. If legal processes are perceived as strategically activated, political allies selectively timed, then institutional neutrality erodes. And when banking, judiciary, and enforcement systems are perceived as political actors aligned with the cartels, democracy weakens. Weaponization of process does not require actual conspiracy to damage public trust. Perceptions alone, the perception of the Standard Bank collaborating with one of the people implicated with the Big Five cartels, it can destabilize this. That is the real risk here. There's currently, of course, no proven POPIA breach, no proven collusion, no proven unlawful disclosure, but there is a high optics volatility in here. The optics volatility is very high, and in democracies under strain, optics matters. The solution is not outrage, it's transparency, because in a constitutional system, institutions must not only be independent, they must be visible, insulated from political confrontation. If process is neutral, show the timeline. If process is lawful, disclose the chronology. Because in moments like this, the difference between coincident and weaponization is not just a timestamp.